Hi and welcome to the third section of this course, Project B, the Space Shooter. This section enters new territory now as we begin development work on our second game, which is a twin-stick space shooter. The twin-stick genre simply refers to any game in which the player input for motion spans two dimensions or axes, typically one axis for movement and one for rotation. Example twin-sticks games include Zombies Ate My Neighbours and Geometry Wars. Our game will rely heavily on coding in C#, as we'll see. The primary purpose of this is to demonstrate by example just how much can be achieved with Unity procedurally, that is, via script, even without using the editor and level-building tools. We'll still use these tools to some extent, but not as much here, and that's a deliberate and not an accidental move. Consequently, this chapter assumes that you have not only completed the game project created in the previous two chapters, but also have a good basic knowledge of C# scripting generally, though not necessarily in Unity. So, let's roll up our sleeves, if we have any, and get stuck in making a twin-stick shooter. This section will demonstrate the following topics: spawning and prefabs, twin-stick controls and axial movement, player controllers and shooting mechanics, basic enemy movement, and AI. Now we'll see the first video of Section 3, Getting Started with a Space Shooter. In this video we'll learn how to create a blank Unity 3D project without any packages or specific assets. Before getting stuck in with the twin-stick shooter game, let's see what the completed project looks like and how it works. The game to be created will contain one scene only. In this scene, the player controls a spaceship that can shoot oncoming enemies. The directional keyboard arrows and WASD move the spaceship around the level, and it will always turn to face the mouse pointer. Clicking the left mouse button will fire ammo. Details about creating new projects can be found in Section 1, the Coin Collection Game Part 1. We'll be coding everything from scratch this time around. Once a project is generated, create some basic folders to structure and organize the project assets from the outset. This is very important to keep track of your files as you work. Create folders for textures, scenes, materials, audio, prefabs, and scripts. Next, our game will depend on some graphical and audio assets. Let's start the textures for the player spaceship, enemy spaceships, and starfield background. Drag and drop textures from Windows Explorer or Finder to the Unity project panel in the Textures folder. Unity imports and configures the textures automatically. By default, Unity imports image files as regular textures for use on 3D objects, and it assumes that their pixel dimensions are Power 2 size. If the size is not actually one of these, then Unity will upscale or downscale the texture to the nearest valid size. This is not appropriate behavior, however, for a 2D top-down space shooter game in which imported textures should appear at their native, imported size without any scaling or automatic adjustment. To fix this, select all the imported textures and from the Object Inspector change their texture type from Texture to Sprite, 2D and UI. Once changed, click on the Apply button to update the settings and textures will retain their imported dimensions. After changing the texture type setting to Sprite, 2D and UI, also remove the checkbox from the Generate Bitmaps box in case this box is enabled. This will prevent Unity from automatically downgrading the quality of textures based on their distance from the camera in the scene. This ensures that your textures retain their highest quality. More information on 2D textures, settings and bitmaps can be found on the online Unity documentation at this site. Now you can easily drag and drop your textures to the scene, adding them as sprite objects. You can't drag and drop them from the project panel to the viewport, but you can drag and drop them from the project panel to the hierarchy panel. When you do this, the texture will automatically be added as a sprite object in the scene. We'll make frequent use of this feature as we work at creating spaceship objects. Next, let's import music and sound effects. These assets were downloaded from opengameart.org. To import audio, simply drag and drop the files from Windows Explorer or Mac Finder to the project panel. When you do this, Unity automatically imports and configures the assets. You can give the audio a test from within the Unity editor by pressing play on the preview toolbar from the Object Inspector. As with texture files, Unity imports audio files using a set of default parameters. These parameters are typically suitable for short sound effects such as footsteps, gunshots, and explosions. But for longer tracks, such as music, they can be problematic, causing long level loading times. To fix this, select the music track in the project panel, and from the Object Inspector, disable the Preload Audio Data checkbox. From the Load Type drop-down box, select the Streaming option. This ensures that the music track is streamed as opposed to loaded wholly in memory at level startup. Nice! We've successfully started with a space shooter game.